All right, we are up and running. Welcome to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding live video chat for Friday, December the 12th. My name is Lee Hayward, and I'm going to be hanging out here for the next hour answering questions and topics of discussion that you have related to health and wellness, fitness and nutrition. Any specific challenges that you would like to discuss related to building muscle, losing fat, and getting in your best shape, feel free to type those questions and topics of discussion into our chat window, and I'll do the best I can to help you out over the course of our video chat today. All right, and we also have some questions that came through here from one of our regular viewers, and this is something you can do as well. You can also submit questions in advance. All right, so second, I'm trying to dig that up there now and get everything organized. So as you're popping onto our live stream here, first off, introduce yourself. Welcome to our chat. Introduce yourself. Let me know where you're tuning in from. And of course, if you do have any questions, feel free to post those into the chat window. And again, we're chiming in from the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, and I'm also streaming this to the Total Fitness Bodybuilding Facebook page as well. So you can be joining us through Facebook and YouTube. We got Lee's joining in, coming through loud and clear. Much appreciated. Always nice to have you joining into our live chats. Lee's a regular. We've got AJ's joining in as well. Hope all is good. You had some issues last week. Yeah, so last week, for those of you who are regulars and were tuning in last week, for lack of a better word, it was a shit show because it should have went fine, but we were in the middle of a huge windstorm, over 100-kilometer-an-hour winds, and it caused the power to surge just multiple times, and every time the power surged. Now, it didn't knock the power out entirely, but it would surge. And chances are what that is when we're having such high winds, what ends up happening is the trees are blowing against the power lines, and it's just enough to knock out the power, and then it has to reboot again. And then the power comes up, and then, of course, the wind blows the trees against the lines again. So the whole night, just like every 10 minutes, the power was just surging on, off, on, off, on, off. And, of course, every time the power surges, the internet knocks out the modem, right? So the whole modem and the router and everything else has to reboot each time. So it's not like it's just like blink, blink, oh, we're back online again. No, it's like a 5-minute delay every time the power would go. So, yeah, I tried to keep it going, and we did literally restart having several power surges. So it just got to the point where, like, this is useless. I can't even answer a single question without it going. So I do apologize for anybody who was tuned in last week for that. It's the replay is still up there online because I didn't delete that show, but it was a shit show to say the least. But anyway, hopefully, fingers crossed, we should be good to go for tonight. All right, so let's see. One question that came through here now. I'm going to jump into that, and then we will get into answering the live Q&A as they're coming through here on the chat window. This one was sent in from one of our regulars, Rocco, and he says, if you had to eat 4 meals in a day to get lean and build muscle, what would they be? Breakfast, lunch, dinner, supper, question mark. It says, also, is a sandwich for lunch okay to get lean? All right, so first off, 4 meals a day, i.e. breakfast, lunch, dinner, and how I would do that is an evening snack, right? That's perfectly fine from a nutrition point of view, from nutrition timing point of view, especially when you're trying to lose body fat. That's basically what I would do. I mean, and that's ideal. You're getting those frequent feedings throughout the day. Now, when it comes to frequent feeding, some people are one extreme or the other. Like you'll get the bodybuilders who say, oh, you got to eat at least 6 meals a day. And then there's other bodybuilders who even go beyond that. Oh, I got to have 7 meals, 8 meals, literally eating every 2 hours on the clock, right? Like boom, setting the alarm and boom, boom, boom. Every 2 hours they got to be eating. It's not that critical. Like meal timing to that, degree of precision is not that critical. But on the other end, then we have some people who are like, oh, I only eat 1 meal a day, or I intermittent fast, and I have this massive gaps between meals. And what's most important, not so much the meal timing, it's what you're eating, how much you're eating, and the overall nutritional value, the overall nutritional consumption. That's number one. Meal timing is still important, but it's secondary in importance to the overall consumption. So, first thing, what are you eating and how much are you eating? That's the most important thing. Because from a fat loss point of view, I mean, he's specifically asked about getting lean. If you're only eating one meal a day, but you're eating a calorie surplus in that one meal a day, it doesn't matter. You're still going to accumulate body fat because the overall average is a calorie surplus. So, like, let's just say you require 2,000 calories per day in order to be in a deficit, and you're having one massive meal a day, which is 2,100 calories in that meal. You're not going to lose body fat, even though you're only eating once a day, or you're having an intermittent fasting window, or whatever you want to call it. Even if you're following that protocol, if you're eating too much within that feeding window, it's not going to work, right? It's the volume of food, how much and what you're actually eating is the number one thing. Spacing it out, it does help. I mean, it can help one with nutrient absorption because it's a lot easier for the body to break down and digest smaller lumps of food than one massive lump of food. And it's also better from a nutritional quality point of view because one prime example, when it comes to optimizing nutrition, a lot of people struggle to get enough protein, right? Of all the macronutrients out there, protein is probably the hardest for the average person to consume enough of. And if you're only eating limited amounts of food or limited meals per day, it's very unlikely you're going to hit that protein target for the day. Whereas if you're having multiple small meals, then you have more opportunities to put in a serving of protein with those smaller meals. And it's probably easier for people to hit those targets. So I'm a big fan of 4 to 6 meals a day, depending on your activity level, how much food you need. But 4 is plenty. So he was asking, could you get lean? Could you get muscular? Could you make results with 4 meals a day? Absolutely. You can certainly do that. Right. The next part of the question was, is a sandwich okay for lunch? There is no good or bad food. And I mean, a sandwich, I mean, that's a very broad category because, okay, well, what kind of sandwich? What's on that sandwich? But you could certainly have, bread, and you could have meat and vegetables or whatever you're putting on that sandwich as part of your fat loss nutrition program and make that work. Right. At the end of the day, it's if you're in a calorie deficit, right? That's what's going to matter when it comes to losing body fat. And you could certainly incorporate food like sandwiches and make that work. I do. I mean, I love bread. I mean, I have bread, I have wraps and stuff like that as part of my eating plan. And as long as you're fitting that into your nutrition plan, you can certainly make it work. The only thing is I would have something else along with that sandwich to balance out the nutritional ratios because most of the time, even if you're having a source of protein on that sandwich, meat or cheese or something along those lines, you're probably still getting way more carbohydrates than you are protein. So having that sandwich with something else, i.e., like having that sandwich along with a chicken breast, or having that sandwich along with a protein shake, or having that sandwich along with some other serving of protein, a cup of cottage cheese, for example, or something like that to bump up the overall protein intake for that meal. And that's one of the things I always look at. Whenever I'm sitting down to the table for a meal, I always think, I want to get my protein, I want to get my vegetables, and I want to get some good quality complex carbohydrates and healthy fat. And I always look at how am I meeting those ratios within this meal? Right? Sometimes it's through solid food, sometimes it's through supplementation, combination of both sometimes. But I always like my benchmark every time I sit down for a meal, I strive for 50 grams of protein per meal. That's what I want. And if I'm having 4 meals per day, that puts me up to 200 grams of protein per day. Boom, protein, check, right? Got the protein intake met for the day. So that's a good guideline for a lot of people to follow, especially if you're in that approximately 200-pound range and you're shooting for about 200 grams of protein a day. 4 meals, 50 grams of protein per meal. Boom, you knock that out of the park there when it comes to the protein requirements. All right, let's see who else we have joining into our video chat here today. I see some regulars popping in too. We've got Robert joining in. Welcome, Robert. Glad to have you joining us. Who else we have joining in? Let's see. We got Adil joining in. We've got John joining in, Desmond. Awesome, guys. Glad to have you joining into our video chat here today. All right. Got a question here from Adil. He says, Lee, are you able to provide form and physique critiques on this chat if I send them to you? Not on this chat directly. That's something that you could probably, if you wanted something like that, like this is something that I offer my coaching students, for example, like if they want critique on their exercise form, for example, they usually send me a video of their exercise form in advance, and I would download it and review it and stuff like that. To try and do that now while I'm streaming live, probably not the optimal thing to do. That's something I would do off air when I'm not streaming live, so I could download the video and stuff and have other windows open on my screen to view that. But if you want to go ahead and submit that, you could still, I mean, you're messaging me through Facebook, just drop me a Facebook Messenger message, right? And something that I could probably cover in a future video chat, but I can't do it live on the chat here right now. But that's something that I do on a regular basis for my coaching students. Like they'll send me exercise videos, you know, where we can review their form and optimize technique literally virtually, almost the same as if we were one-on-one training in the gym, but we're just doing it virtually that way. And a lot of times we also do the same thing with progress photos, you know, focusing on, okay, like what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses, and what do we need to focus on based on your physical development, right? So that's things that we focus on as well. But you can send it in and we could probably have that as content for a future video chat, but I can't do it live on this video chat right now. What else we got? We have another one from Eduardo saying, my name is Eduardo, police officer from New York City and Air Force reservist. Hey, Lee, been watching you for a minute. You just started watching me right when we went live. Dealing with anxiety and depression, watching you is helping me bit by bit. Still a struggle. You know, I respect you for sharing that. And again, thanks for tuning in and you know, thanks for the support and watching the shows. I can appreciate that because anxiety, depression, it's a common thing and it's more and more common. And thankfully people are becoming more willing to admit it or ask for help and stuff like that, which I think is great. Just a second. I just want to close that off because I'm being covered here. I mean, I have got a lot of friends and family members who are dealing with that as well. So, I mean, it's certainly something that I think we're all familiar with to some degree. I know there's a few people who try and like, brush it off and pretend it's not a real issue, but it is a real issue for sure. And one of the things I found that is excellent for dealing with that is just exercise. I mean, I'll be honest, that's part of the reason why I'm such an avid exerciser is because it's like my natural therapy, if you will, my me time, my therapy, my antidepressant is getting some exercise in. And if I don't get it in, I feel the difference. Like I will feel down. I will feel like in a slump mentally and physically if I'm not able to exercise. So there is power to it, right? Regular exercise certainly helps with elevating not only your physical body in terms of strength and endurance and muscle and all that, but the mental and cognitive performance and just your feel-good hormones as well. So yeah, I actually made a video about this. This is a few years back now. It's a YouTube video talking about walking as a form of natural antidepressant. I think if you just search on YouTube for Lee Hayward walking, I gotta look it up now because I'm brain farting here, but it's just a second. I'm just going to search for it, and I'll link to that video in the video chat. Lee Hayward. It was a video I made several years back, but it's still a good one, still applicable for today. Shit, where is that to? I'm trying to find it there now. I'm going to bring that up. And for those of you who are just joining in right now, we're in the middle of a live Q&A. So if there's anything that you would like to discuss related to health and wellness, fitness and nutrition, feel free to type your questions and topics of discussion into the chat window. I'm just digging up a video here that I wanted to share. Where is it? Yes, the title of the video, if you search for Lee Hayward walking, The best natural remedy for depression. That's the title of the video. I'm just going to link to that. It's one that I made several years back. 7 years ago, actually. Okay, it's not all that long ago. I thought it was longer than that, but 7 years ago I made that video. I'm just going to post it in the chat there if you want to go check that out. And that's something, even if you're not dealing with this per se, it's something that you could certainly watch, and I think would be helpful for sure. There, I just posted that link. It should come through there in the video chat, so you can go check that out. Awesome. Who else we got joining in here today? We have Armored Ghost. Armored Ghost. How do you power surge for that last rep? Context. I'm not sure what you mean by power surge for the last rep. I'm context would certainly help for that. I'm not needing. I don't know how to answer that one. You just do your set with as good form, and when you hit failure, you stop the set. I don't know. If Mr. Armored Ghost, if you're still watching and you want to kind of give me some context, we can come back to that one. All right. Next question. I got a deal. It's got another one there saying, how do you cope when reaching your natural potential in the gym and making progress in a very slow pace? That's a good question, and it's one that I can certainly relate to. And I know a lot of people, as you get older, you're going to deal with this. It's an interesting dynamic because I started training at a very young age. Like my first introduction to fitness and working out was at the age of 12. So I went through my entire teenage years, through my 20s and my 30s. And when you're younger, you tend to make progress consistently. As long as you're working out consistently, as long as you're getting adequate nutrition, like as long as you're doing the right things, your body is naturally going to progress. Right? It's going to get bigger, stronger, fitter. You're going to see that positive change happen very consistently as long as you stick with it. As you get older, even if you're sticking with it, there's going to be some decline in certain areas, especially when it comes to muscle, when it comes to peak power output. That's just naturally going to decline. Right. I mean, it's inevitable. It happens to everybody as they age. You're first off, like your joints, tendons, and ligaments are not going to be able to handle the same abuse and punishment and workload as they did when they were younger. Like I can remember, like in my teens and 20s, like joint pain didn't exist. There was no joint pain. It didn't matter how hard I trained, how hard I pushed myself. Like my joints felt fine. Now, as I'm older, the joints, they don't always feel fine. Like I got to warm up. I got to make sure that I'm doing good mobility and flexibility work. And if I try and push it too hard, I will feel it. Oh, the shoulders are hurting. Oh, my back is hurting. My hips are hurting. My knees are hurting. Elbows are hurting. Like you will feel the joints much more so as you get older. And a lot of times what's limiting you in how much you can lift or how hard you can push yourself, it might not necessarily be muscular strength. It might be the joints they hurt, right? As you get older, stuff hurts and you can't push yourself as much. I mean, and also your peak power output, your explosiveness, your speed and your power will naturally decline as you get older. And I mean, I can see that happening now in my 40s. Like I'm not as fast or explosive as I used to be in my teens and 20s. I mean, in the 30s, it was probably a slow decline, but not noticeable, but it was kind of like flatlining, if you will. Like I wasn't really making any power or explosiveness progress, but I was kind of like holding on. Now that I'm in my 40s, I can see it starting to drop off. And you can even test this out with different things like sprinting. Like I can't sprint as fast now as I used to be able to when I was younger. I can't jump as high now as I used to when I was younger. Just that explosive power is just not there the same as it was when you're younger. And we see this across the board in athletics. I mean, there's a reason why you don't have world champion athletes in their 40s, 50s, and 60s or whatever. Like when they get into their 30s, they're like, okay, you're over the hill now. It's time to retire, right? Like that's just the way it is. And then the next generation comes through. So yeah, you have to deal with that natural decline, if you will, in as you get older. But with that being said, there's probably still other areas of fitness that you can focus on. One thing that's very interesting to note is even though peak power and explosiveness and speed will decline as you get older, endurance and stamina, they don't decline to the same degree. And a lot of times when you're looking at like ultra endurance, very often it's people in their 40s or even 50s who are still doing quite well in ultra endurance events. And sometimes the older you are, the better it is for those type of events because you have more patience, more mental toughness, more discipline. I don't know, more stubbornness, or I guess is another word we could use. But when it comes to that type of activity that requires settling in for a long duration, very often an older, more mature body and mind can actually do that. And you see like a lot of ultra and distance runners or ultra and distance cyclists and Ironman and triathlons and like that kind of stuff. Some of these athletes, people in their later years, like 40 plus, are doing quite well in those. And this is something that I can relate to as well, because in recent years, I've gotten involved with cycling, and it's something that I really enjoy. And it's something that I can still progress with, right? I can still make progress in the endurance realm. Whereas when it comes to strength, power, muscle mass, I've kind of reached my genetic limit, if you will, in terms of what I can really do with that. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody puts effort in, you're not going to make any progress, but the rate of progress certainly declines. And I'm not as big or as strong or as fast as I used to be when I was younger. I can certainly see that. But I've focusing on other areas of fitness, other areas that I enjoy, and other areas that I can still make progress with. So it's a learning curve, a maturity curve, and it's something that we're all going to have to deal with, right? So either just accept it and do the best you can to slow that rate of decline, or you can try other areas of fitness and build up skills that you probably never had before. And if you're taking up something new, I mean, you can still get those newbie gains in other areas of fitness. But yeah, that's a good observation for sure. And how to cope with it, it's challenging. I'll be honest. I mean, it's nice to, when you're still making progress. Like I reminisce over the days when gains came relatively easily. Like as long as you were consistent and you showed up and you did the work, I mean, you got progress. Now I show up and I do the work, and it's like I'm just slowing the rate of decline. Like it's very rare to set new personal records now, right? It's like I'm fighting to slow the rate of decline instead of fighting to make new gains, right? And it's a different mindset for sure. All right, who else we got joining in? Let's see. We've got Barely Awake. Barely Awake 45. All right, great one. Hopefully you're awake enough to listen to the answer to your question. Is it better to breathe rhythmically when lifting, even if it feels unnatural, or prioritize instinctive timing? All right, that's the main thing is don't hold your breath for a prolonged period of time. I actually made a video talking about the 3 ways to breathe with weightlifting, right? And there's different techniques, breathing techniques, depending on the type of lifting, the intensity of the lifting, and the duration of the lifting. So just to briefly cover them here, if you're doing traditional workouts, say like sets of 10 reps with moderate weight, the general rule of thumb is you breathe out as you exert, you breathe in as you lower. So you're doing a bench press, as you press the weight up, breathe out as you lower the weight down, breathe in. That's the general rule of thumb. Now, if you can play around with that depending on the intensity and of course your personal preferences. Like some people just have their own natural breathing tempo, but I wouldn't recommend like trying to hold your breath for a set of 10 reps. Like that's just too long, right? You need to breathe, right? Just and the cool thing about breathing, like there's all these breathing techniques, and even if we get outside of weightlifting, like you can start researching breathing. Like a lot of people link breath work to meditation and breath exercises and all these different breathing exercises, you know, like box breathing and relaxation breathing and all this. But even if you don't focus on it whatsoever, your body's going to breathe anyway. Like it's just something that's ingrained in all of us instinctively. So you don't need to overthink it. Your body's not going to let you just not breathe. All right. It's going to breathe for you. But you can kind of optimize it in certain situations with some conscious effort. And again, for most just general mid-range, moderate weight training exercises, breathe out as you lift, breathe in as you lower. That works for a lot of people, and it can help you to improve your efficiency. If you're doing really low rep power training, like a 1 rep max lift or a power lifter or an Olympic lifter or something that's a very short duration, like a single rep or low repetitions, it can actually be advantageous to hold your breath. So, for example, if I was doing a squat or a bench press and I was going to try for a 1 rep max, at the start of the lift, when I on-rack that weight, I would take a deep breath and I would hold the air in. I would pull it in, like do a big belly breath. Make your belly as big as you can. Fill your belly with air and just expand. And that would create tension and stabilize your torso. Then you would lower the weight down with your breath held, and that will help to create tension and stabilization to actually help you to rebound out of the bottom of the lift. And then in between the reps, after you complete the lift, then you can breathe normally. So let's just say you were going to do a heavy set of 3 reps of squats or bench presses or whatever. You could literally take a deep breath, hold it, do the repetition, lock it out, and then take a few breaths and then hold it again, do another rep, and then you literally hold the air during the repetition itself. Now, a lot of people think, oh my God, you shouldn't hold your air. We're talking like a second or two. Like it's the length of time it takes you to complete the repetition. I mean, a couple seconds or more. You're not going to pass out holding your breath for a few seconds. Like it's not, your body's not going to go into oxygen dead or anything like that. Especially you just took a deep breath. So you just filled your lungs and filled everything with oxygen. You're good for a few seconds. All right. The whole idea of holding the air during those heavy lifts is to stabilize the torso and to help to create tension in your core so that you can help rebound out of the bottom. And if you watch powerlifters or Olympic lifters or any strength athlete who's doing max effort, low rep work, this is what they'll typically do. They'll hold their air during the actual lift itself. The third type of breathing is when you're doing high repetition work. So, for example, you're doing push-ups for reps or body weight squats for reps or ab crunches or something like that, or things that are doing high repetition that the duration could be 30 seconds or a minute or even multiple minutes, you know, like a long duration exercise, muscular endurance work. In that situation, sometimes it's effective to breathe with your body. So like, for example, think of your body like an accordion. As it contracts, you breathe out. As it expands, you breathe in. As it contracts, you breathe out. As it expands, you breathe in. So for example, high repetition body weight squats, you would actually be more efficient to breathe out as you squat down, breathe in as you stand up, because you're working within the body and it's more efficient. Even when you're doing ab crunches, like as you crunch and squeeze your body together, you blow the air out. As you expand, you breathe in, blow out, breathe in. And that works very well, and it's more efficient for high repetition work. So those are the 3 general forms of breathing that you can incorporate. But the main thing is just don't hold your breath for a prolonged period of time. Even if you don't even think about your breathing and you just breathe naturally, your body is going to be good enough for most people. It's only when you're starting to really take things to that next level where conscious breath work can be a marginal gain, if you will. All right. What else we got there? Have you ever suffered from sleep apnea? Did your sleep improve as you got later? I have never had sleep apnea personally, but I know several of my coaching students who have or had sleep apnea. And generally, as people gain weight, they can develop sleep apnea. It's a side effect of having excess weight, and not just excess fat weight, but even just excess muscular weight. Like you see this, especially like in bodybuilders, powerlifters, football players, people who are just big people, even big muscular people, that extra mass, especially when you're lying on your side sleeping, can compress and place extra stress on the airways. So a lot of times you will see bodybuilders, powerlifters, big athletes like football players and stuff will have CPAP machines, to increase oxygen throughout the night so that they can get better quality sleep. I personally have never had that issue myself, but it is a common one for sure. And generally, losing weight can help, but you know, it's something you would have to monitor. I mean, like if you are using a CPAP machine or someone who can continue to use that, like, and I wouldn't just say like, oh, I went on a diet and I lost 10 pounds. I don't need my CPAP machine anymore. No, you probably still do, but that is like a good move in the right direction towards curing sleep apnea, is losing weight and just reducing that pressure on the airways. But it is quite common for sure. Let's see what we got here. Brian's joining in, says, Lee, I've been getting a bit stronger, but my weight is not going up. It may be so little, like a half a pound to maybe a pound or two, but it just doesn't stay stable. How many meals a day should I be eating? 5 to 7? Generally, yeah. This, for someone who's struggling to gain weight and eat enough, more frequent meals is definitely easier. It's easier to eat smaller, more frequent meals, and it's easier to get more food in you that way. Because if you're naturally a lean person and you're struggling to gain weight and you say like, oh, I'm only going to eat my 3 squares a day or whatever, you're probably not going to be able to eat enough in those 3 meals a day to consume a calorie surplus in order to grow from. And this is where having those, the typical bodybuilding 6 meal a day approach, this is where it comes from, because it's a lot easier to have more meals to get more food in versus trying to just jam more food in per fewer meals. Another one that can really help as well, liquid calories. Protein shakes can certainly help because it's easier to drink calories than it is to eat them. Now, you can also use this in reverse if you're trying to lose weight, right? Because liquid calories, right, they're not as satiating, they're not as filling. So if you're trying to lose weight, you probably want to eliminate liquid calories. But for someone who's trying to gain weight, this can actually be a good strategy. And this is where protein shakes can help in those situations. So for example, if you're having, let's say, 6 meals a day, it doesn't have to be 6 solid food meals. It could be 3 solid food meals and 3 shakes. I mean, that might be a great way to get those extra calories, get that extra protein in you without overloading your stomach and your digestive system or making it feel uncomfortable, right? It's a lot more easier to get liquid calories in. And the nice thing about those liquid calories is you can add things like if you're having blender smoothies, for example, like you can sneak in a lot of extra nutrients in there as well, right? And extra ways to sneak calories in. I know, like, for example, when I was younger and trying to gain weight, and this is one of the strategies I used, is like blender smoothies. I mean, you can put your protein and probably put in fruit with it, probably put in some peanut butter with it, and just bump up the calories that way. And it was a great way to do that. Right? Now that I'm not trying to gain weight and I want to keep my weight stable, I mean, I don't rely on that nearly as much. I mean, sometimes I'll still have a blender smoothie occasionally, maybe like as a meal replacement if I'm in a hurry, but I'm not doing it to try and get extra food in, right? But that's a great way to sneak in extra food. Shakes, blender smoothies, because again, it's easier to drink those calories than it is to sit down and have a plate of solid food. But as long as the weight is going up, I wouldn't be too concerned about it going up quickly, because muscle weight gain is a slow process. Fat weight gain, on the other hand, can be a very fast process. So if someone is gaining weight fast, like a pound a week or more, a lot of that extra weight is probably going to be excess body fat. Whereas if you're gaining slow, like maybe a couple pounds a month, that's actually really good, because it's more likely that it's actual lean mass that you're gaining and not just fat. Especially if you're getting stronger along with that weight gain, that's a good sign. So slow, steady progress is much better from a weight loss or weight gain point of view. If people gain or lose weight too quickly, that's a red flag. Unless, of course, we're looking at someone who's obese and starts a diet. Like that's a different scenario altogether. But for the average person, slow, steady progress, either weight gain or weight loss, is what we're looking for, right? But we want that slow progress to compound over time. So even though in the moment it doesn't look like much, like, oh, the scale went up a pound, big deal. Well, if it goes up a pound again in a couple weeks' time, and then another couple weeks you go up another pound, and it's that slow, steady progress, and then over the course of a year, you put on 10 or 15 pounds of lean muscular body weight, that's huge. Like we look at like this time next year, if you got 10 plus pounds of lean muscular body weight on your frame, that is huge progress, and that can compound and make a significant difference. But when you're looking at it day to day or week to week, it's like, it's so insignificant. Vice versa, losing weight, same principle applies. Like if you lose a pound on the scale, people say, oh, big deal, I only lost a pound. Well, if you did that every week over the course of a year, like that adds up to a significant change. That's huge, right? So don't get frustrated over slow progress, because all progress is slow progress. It's just we want to see slow progress consistently on a regular basis and let that slow progress compound, right? Those little baby wins, that's what's going to compound into the big wins later on. So you're probably on the right track, right? I mean, if you were losing weight, when the goal is to gain, okay, I'd be concerned there. Or vice versa, if someone's trying to lose weight and they're gaining, okay, I'd be concerned. But as long as it's moving in the right direction, even if it's slowly moving in the right direction, that's progress. All right, who else we got joining in? We've got John joining in saying, I'm eating 150 grams of sourdough right now as I type this. I love sourdough bread. It's one of my favorites for sure. Nice. Glad to have you joining in, John. And John's a great example. I mean, you can see it in his profile pic there. I think he just recently did a bodybuilding competition, or it was a classic physique, one or the other, in his 60s. So kudos to you. Made a comeback in your 60s there to the stage. Who else we got joining in? We've got Demond887. What are the advantages and disadvantages of taking 4 10-minute walks throughout the day compared to doing one continuous 40-minute walk? Both are helpful. I wouldn't look at it as good, bad, right, wrong. I mean, either one is a win in my book. But if you want to kind of break it down, first off, it's walking. So this isn't high intensity cardio. So you're not really going to be, unless you're just bare bones getting started. Like I should clarify that, because a lot of times people discredit walking and saying, oh, it's such an easy exercise or whatever. It's not a big deal. But for some people, walking is a big deal, right? Depending on your fitness level and where you're starting from. So, I mean, for someone who's overweight and out of shape, walking could be a max effort workout, cardiovascular wise. For someone who's in really good shape, walking is just like active recovery. So it could be anywhere in between. But let's just look at it from a general perspective point of view. The idea of doing a continuous walk, well, you're going to get more cardiovascular benefits from that, because you're going to be elevating your heart rate, keeping your heart rate elevated for a prolonged period of time. So from a fitness and stamina point of view, it's better from the endurance side of things. But the idea of doing these short little intervals or these short little mini walks it's a little spike to the metabolism throughout the day. And sometimes, depending on your schedule, it may be easier to get in multiple shorter walks than it is to get in one bigger walk. I incorporate both. Like I will do longer cardio sessions, and I'll also incorporate short cardio sessions. I just stack it up. It's getting just it all adds up. It's like, adding a drop to the bucket, right? Sometimes you add you pour a cup into the bucket. Sometimes you're adding a few drops to the bucket, but it's still filling up the bucket, right? It's still progress in the right direction. So I wouldn't overthink it from as what's good, bad, right, or wrong. It's what can you fit into your schedule, right? If I'm pressed for time and I say, okay, I want to get in some exercise, but I don't have time to go for an hour walk, but you know what? Hey, I can do 10, 15 minutes on my lunch break, or I can do 10, 15 minutes before my next appointment. Hey, I'll do my 10 or 15 minutes. Like I'll do a little jaunt around the block. I mean, it's something's better than nothing. But if I have the time and I'm able to do it, then I like to get out and do longer cardio sessions or longer walks. All right. So they both have advantages. I'm not, there's really no disadvantage. I mean, right. There's the more exercise you do, and especially when it comes to walking and stuff like that, I'm not going to say there's a disadvantage to any of it. Right. I mean, it's all a positive for sure. It's just what can you fit in? I mean, obviously, if you're a serious athlete, you would have a structured training program, but just for general health and wellness and calorie expenditure and fat burning, they all have benefits. One of the nice things about the short, frequent walks is it helps to improve digestion. It helps to improve blood sugar utilization because you get that little spike of exercise throughout the day. And, that can carry over. So, like, for example, there was I've got a link to it on my website. There was a study done, I believe it was, let me refer to this. If you go to my blog, leehayward.com, and search for Lee Hayward, no time to exercise, it should pop up there, right? It's the blog post is no time to exercise, start with 10 minutes. And this is the theory behind that blog post is, hey, you got no time to exercise, start with 10 minutes. But there was a study done somewhere. I can't remember the reference to it off the top of my head here now, but they were comparing the effects of 10-minute walks after meals on blood sugar. And just doing a 10-minute walk after each meal was very effective at reducing blood sugar and helping to aid with digestion. And it was helpful for people like even on par with some diabetic medication in some cases. Just going for a 10-minute walk, it helps to clear that blood sugar out of the system, helps the body to better utilize it and digest it, and it can also increase your activity. So if you did that, just a 10-minute walk after each meal, I mean, depending on the size and how intense you are, like you could burn 50 to 100 calories during that 10-minute walk. That adds up, right? I mean, that's a little tiny bit of exercise. And the cool thing about it is it's such a small amount of exercise that it's not going to have a negative impact on your hunger levels or making you want to overcompensate for it. If you went out and did like a high intensity HIIT session for an hour or more, that's probably going to spike your appetite and would cause you to want to eat more. But you go for a little 10-minute walk around the block, it can actually blunt your appetite, right? And it's not going to cause you to want to overindulge to compensate for it. So I found personally, from a fat loss point of view, short walking like that is actually one of the best ways to increase calorie expenditure without causing your appetite to go out of whack. Because as an endurance athlete, I found like when I go and do if I go out and do a multi-hour bike ride, my appetite goes through the roof, and then I have to eat to compensate for that. I mean, first off, I'm eating before the ride, I'm eating during the ride, I'm eating after the ride. Like I'm basically eating so much that a lot of times you can even cancel out the calories burnt from the exercise itself. Now you're still getting the fitness benefits, the endurance, the stamina, the VO2 max, all that. But if you're looking at calories in, calories out, high intensity cardio and long duration cardio can actually sometimes be counterproductive because it drives your appetite up. But when you're doing short mini blocks of cardio, like getting out for a walk, and especially if you're doing just little short walks, it doesn't have a negative impact on your appetite, and it can actually help to create a calorie deficit. And this is something that I used to do, like especially when I was getting ready for bodybuilding shows. Like sometimes if I was sitting around, I'd be a bit peckish. I say, you know what? Right. I'm getting the munchies, I'm getting the cravings, and I find myself like just randomly looking in the refrigerator or looking in the cupboards, dreaming about food. I say, you know what? I got to get out of the house. I'm just going to put on my sneakers and go for a walk around the block. And that would distract me. It would get me out of the kitchen. So I wasn't eating, I was exercising. And very often just the act of going for that walk could actually curb the appetite. So it was a double win because one, I wasn't in the kitchen being tempted by the food or snacking on the food. And two, I was outside actually burning some extra calories. So it was a win-win. And I found like those little mini cardio sessions or little mini walks can be a great edge in helping you to create that calorie deficit from a fat loss point of view. And it's so small that it's not going to drive your recovery out of whack. Like it's not going to hinder your recovery so that you can't go to the gym and train, right? Like going for a 10-minute walk, it's not going to be like, oh, my legs are so sore after that 10-minute walk, I can't train legs today. No. If, if anything, I mean, it'll just help to limber up the knees and joints and actually make you feel better and more prepared for a leg workout. So I'm a big advocate from a weight loss point of view of short mini cardio sessions like that, especially walking. Right. But with that being said, you can still do longer walks. That's still helpful as well. But those mini walks, that can be like your little secret weapon. And the cool thing about it is they're so small and so short, you can get them done before you even have any time to make an excuse not to do it. Right? Let's see what else we got there. Why some days I feel strong and other days I feel my muscles flat. If I push a little on my weekdays, I don't feel my muscles. I feel my tendons. On strong days, I have better mind-muscle connection. We're all going to go through ups and downs like that. Nobody's just going to feel go 100% every day. And there could be multiple reasons for that. But one, if you went into the gym and did a hard workout yesterday, you're probably going to be in recovery mode today. Your body is not going to, if you gave it 100% yesterday, you're not just going to be able to go in there and bang out another 100% workout again today. You're probably going to have to rest, recover, and grow. So that's normal. I mean, elite level athletes do this all the time. Like, they're not just banging out high intensity session after high intensity session, day after day after day. They will structure them in where they'll do, okay, I'll do a hard high intensity workout today. The next day is going to be like an active recovery workout, or focusing on other elements of fitness, flexibility, mobility, technical training, or whatever. And then they'll have in another high intensity day. But they're not just banging out high intensity after high intensity after high intensity, day after day. You just physically can't. Your body will just burn out or get injured. So that's totally normal to have those ups and downs, feeling strong, feeling weak, feeling full, feeling flat. And nutrition plays another role. I mean, what you're eating. If you're well nourished, you're carb loaded, you're probably going to feel full. If you're missing meals, you're running on empty, a bit carb depleted, then obviously you're going to feel flat. So all this stuff can play a role. Your sleep, stress, family stress, work stress, all that stuff plays a role as well. So it's not just the workout itself or the nutrition or one thing. Like, it's all these little things that can compound and stir the pot. So it's hard for me to pinpoint why you're feeling that way, but I just want to let you know that feeling that way is normal, and everyone goes through it to some degree or another. Right? Even elite level athletes go through it. Right? They're not feeling 100% every single day. Let's see what else. There we go. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Glad to help. What else we have there? French press versus skull crusher. What's Lee's take? Triceps locked and loaded. A lot of people use those terms interchangeably. So I'd like to know it's like some people will say a lying tricep extension, a skull crusher, a nose breaker is another term I've heard it. I've heard it called the French press. I mean, it's all that type of tricep extension, usually done with an easy curl bar. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the same exercise. Unless, correct me if I'm wrong, if you're still watching this, Eric, you can chime in into the comments there. Some people refer to a French press as the overhead tricep extension and the skull crusher as the lying tricep extension, lying on a flat bench. If that's what you're referring to, it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. It's personal preference, really. What do you feel more comfortable with? Right? If I'm doing overhead tricep work, I usually like to use dumbbells, and I like to do a single arm dumbbell because I find I can get a good range of motion, get that really good stretch with the dumbbell behind the head. If I'm doing a lying tricep work, like on a flat bench I will use the easy curl bar and do the skull crusher, if you will, or the lying tricep extension. There's a lot of machines at the gym that can kind of simulate that as well. We've got one at Omega Health and Fitness, the gym that I train at. It's kind of like the opposite of a preacher curl. So instead of doing curls, you're using like a preacher pad, but it's doing a tricep extension. I really like that one. I find that really gives me a good full range of motion and a good peak contraction in the triceps. And I'm also a big fan of cable tricep work, tricep push downs with all the different attachments. There's a lot of different exercises you can do with cables, from the high pulley as well as the low pulley cable. So I'm a big fan of that as well. But it's not one or the other. One's right, wrong, good or bad. They all work, right? And it's, what do you feel works the best for you in terms of what gives you the best pump, and also what's the most comfortable? Because an issue when it comes to working the triceps, especially as you get older, is elbow pain. So if you find like, man, those skull crushers, they just kill my elbows, but I can do a tricep push down with a cable and that doesn't hurt my elbows, do the one that doesn't hurt your elbows, right? That's something that's going to play a bigger role, especially the older you get, that nagging joint pain, right? And I have to deal with that from time to time. So sometimes my exercise selection is what my body will allow me to do, not necessarily what might be based on MRI studies. This one activates more muscle fibers than that one. It's like, if my joints allow me to do this comfortably, I'm doing that one. If my joints don't allow me to do that exercise comfortably, I'm not doing that one, right? Regardless of what the latest study or scan or muscle activation, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes you have to put some practicality and real world application in there. All right, who else we got there? Second, guys, I got to wet my whistle. Yeah. Me and my friends always argue about form. I say 7 out of 10 form is acceptable to go heavier, while they say 10 out of 10 form is necessary while going lighter. Who's right? What's working for you, right? Because you can see examples of people who have developed great physiques in both categories. The only one that I would be cautious on is if that looser form and heavier weight is causing you to get injured. That's a negative in my point of view. But if, knock on wood, if you're injury free, it feels good, it's working for you, you're seeing results, there have been people make great progress with both. Like sometimes you'll see people who are perfect technicians and they're very sticklers for weight or for form. The weight's a bit moderate because they're so technical, perfect with their form, but they're getting in great results. They're getting in shape. They're seeing progress. And then you'll see other guys who are they're kind of like just the hardcore gym bros. Like I'll give you some examples from like pro bodybuilding. If you look at watch like videos of Ronnie Coleman training, Branch Warren, some of those guys that trained at Metroflex gym, like that was kind of like the heavyweight, looser form, grinded out hardcore. I mean, who can argue? Ronnie Coleman won 8 Mr. Olympias, arguably the best bodybuilder in the world. I mean, he was throwing around some heavyweight. Branch Warren, same thing. He was throwing around some heavyweight. It wasn't always textbook, slow, controlled form, that you would see like it wouldn't be the exercise demo video, right? But it worked. I mean, the guys built world-class physiques training that way. And then you see other guys who are very meticulous with their form and still build great physiques. Personally, I err more on I would like to see better form, and that's just my personality. That's just the way I like to train, because I found when I sometimes go heavier and sloppier, I've ended up getting hurt in the past. So I try to err on the conservative side. But from a practical point of view, you'll see results from different training philosophies. I mean, if you watch, like, a prime example of this, go back and watch Pumping Iron, right? Like that's the classic. The guys in there, like, see Arnold and Lou Frigno and all the guys from back in the 70s, like there was nothing strict about their form. Like they were heaving and swinging, and you watch them do the rows and they're using momentum, they're jerking the weight up. Same when it comes to like their lateral raises or their curls, like they're arching the back and they're swinging, but they built amazing physiques. So, it works, right? It all works, right? It's just, what do you prefer? So you kind of answered your own question. If you prefer to go a little heavier and a little looser with the form and that's working for you, go for it. If your friends like to go very strict with the form and a little lighter on the weight and that's working for them, then that's what's right for them, right? I'm not saying it's right or wrong. It really just, you got to look at it from a big picture perspective. The most important thing is that you're training consistently and training in a progressive overload fashion, regardless of how you're going about it. The consistency trumps all. Because if the one that allows you to be the most consistent, put it that way. Because if you're not consistent, then it doesn't matter what style of training you're doing, then it's not going to work. Lee's joining in saying, do you have any advice to increase my speed? I'm training sandbag runs for a strongman comp. My strength and endurance is increasing, but I cannot seem to get faster. It feels like the handbrake is on. I kind of touched on this one earlier. Someone was talking about it was a question about the fitness declining as we get older. And I can certainly appreciate that, because I mentioned, now that I'm in my 40s, like, I'm not as fast and as explosive as I used to be in my 20s. Like, that's just part of your body. As it gets older, you will lose some of that speed and explosiveness. Now, you can still train for it, but it's probably never going to be 100% like it was when you were younger, right? That's just something that naturally declines. And that's of all the physical attributes, speed and explosiveness and top end power are some of the fastest to drop off, even if you're training consistently, right? It's not that, oh, I'm sitting on the sofa, a lazy fat ass channel surfing and eating chips and donuts and drinking beer all day long. No, like, you could still be an active person and you will still see your strength, power, and explosiveness drop off, your speed and explosiveness. That's what's happened to me. Like, I'm not as fast, I'm not as explosive, I don't have the same top end power that I used to. Right. And that's probably part of what you're experiencing right now. You can still focus on training for it, but just realize that if you're 40 plus, that element of fitness is on its natural decline. So basically what you'll be training for is to try and minimize that decline. Right. It's a tough one for sure, because the thing is if you just throw caution to the wind and you start forcing yourself to be faster and more explosive, you're probably going to end up getting hurt. So the best thing that I can suggest there is just focus on the consistency and try and have some gradual progressive overload within that training, but still lifting within your means. Because if you push it beyond the limits, you just, again, throw caution to the wind, say, okay, I got to get faster. And you just keep pushing it and forcing it. Yeah, you'll probably temporarily get faster, but then you probably end up getting injured, especially when you're doing strongman work. Like strongman, you're under heavy loads, and you're trying to do so for time, and being fast and explosive. I mean, it's a great sport, don't get me wrong, but there's a high risk of injury there, right? So you have to play that carefully, right? And I would much rather hold back the reins a little bit and think long term versus let's just throw caution to the wind and risk getting injured, and then that could set you back big time. Could end your strongman sport prematurely if you get injured. But that's something that it's just a fact of life. One thing that might help, this is just me brainstorming, thinking out loud here now. You could do some, like, if you're doing sandbag training, do some training with a heavier sandbag and purposely go at a slower pace for whatever it is that you're doing. I don't know what particular event it is that you have to do the sandbag for, but this is just me, thinking out loud again. I would probably try some heavier work at a slower pace, and then purposely use a lighter bag and do faster pace and kind of work both ends of it. And then obviously do some work with the bag that you're going to be lifting within the competition itself. Right. So the ideal weight, train that, but you could also purposely use a lighter one, which would naturally allow you to do the drill or the exercise faster. And then also purposely train with a heavier one, but purposely train that one at a slower tempo, because obviously if it's heavier weight, and this might help to bridge the gap, right? It's kind of like overs and unders, right? Like train over the competition weight and then under the competition weight. And that might help to just spur on, better technique and help to improve that speed or explosiveness, or at least minimize the decline as you're moving forward. That's something that I would probably experiment with. Uh, did you already speak too fast rep versus heavy to get defined and more muscular? Did you already speak to fast rep versus heavy to get defined and muscular? Okay. Uh, I have been getting headache when I take creatine. Okay, that's two questions. There's totally different ones. Fast rep versus heavy. Uh, honestly, again, if you're tuning in and you want to chime in, feel free to elaborate in the comments there. But what's going to determine whether you get defined is losing body fat. Like the rep speed, the tempo. I mean, it can help, but it's not going to have a big impact because if you're carrying excess body fat, it doesn't matter how much muscle you have underneath; it's still going to look smooth on the surface. So you're not going to have that defined, ripped, muscular look. It's just going to be soft and smooth. So losing the body fat, regardless of whatever training style you're using, is the number one element to getting that defined muscular look. I mean, this is why bodybuilders diet down for competition, right? Regardless if they're high intensity guys, high volume guys, whatever style of training they like to do, they all have to lose the body fat. And if you lose the body fat, you're going to have the definition, right? Because the lower the body fat, the thinner the skin, the more you're going to be able to see that muscular detail and definition underneath. So that is hands down the most important thing. As far as the style of training, a lot of it is personal preference, right? Like we mentioned before, like Adil was talking about, hey, he likes to train heavier with a little bit of looser form. Some of his friends like to go a bit lighter with perfect form. Who's right? If it's working for you, both can be right. Right? It's not necessarily a, you know, you're right, I'm wrong, or blah blah blah, or either or. It's just a different style of training, and you will naturally find one that you gravitate towards, right? And if you don't really have a preference, then this is something you can actually cycle through. I've done that before. Cycle through. Hey, I'm going to do a phase where I'm going to prioritize muscular endurance and conditioning, and then I'm going to go through a phase where I'm going to prioritize power training, or I might go through a phase where I prioritize hypertrophy training or sports conditioning training. Like you can do that, and that's the fun part of it. That makes it fun and enjoyable, especially over the long term, because each time you switch up the training modalities, it's like you're doing something new, and it's breaking you out of this rut, and it gets that mental stimulation as well as the physical stimulation, and it's just keeps the training fun. Like prime example for me now in recent years, where I'm competing in local cycling races in the summertime when peak cycling season, I'm spending less time in the gym and I'm spending a lot more time outside on the bike. Now that we're in the winter, that's reversed. I'm spending more time in the gym and I'm spending less time on the bike. So that's a nice change of pace. And that's something that you can purposely cycle into your training as well. Like it doesn't always have to be, I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again, week in, week out, month in, month out, year in, year out. You can change it up, right? Whether it's sports or activity related, or if it's just personal preference related, right? It's not right or wrong. It's just you can change it up. And then very often when you change, that's when you'll see some of the fastest progress is because it's providing that unique muscle stimulation. Let's see what else we got. This one, the headaches when taking creatine. That's don't take creatine. I mean, we could say that. It's something I've never personally experienced. Like I've been personally using creatine since creatine came out. I mean, like the first time I remember using creatine, I believe was in 1995. I bought my first container of creatine, and I've been using it pretty consistently since. Now, in the early days, when the research was limited, a lot of people say, "Oh, you should cycle your creatine. Like go on it for like cycle it on and off." And I used to do that. I would cycle it on and off. Now the research is saying like there's no point in cycling it on and off from the health benefits of it and stuff like that. People just recommend, hey, just take a moderate dose consistently, just the same as you take your multivitamins consistently or whatever. What I would have to ask in this situation is this something new? Like, are you just starting taking creatine and it's like a direct correlation? Like, hey, I just started creatine 2 weeks ago and I've been just getting headaches within the last 2 weeks. And it's like a direct correlation, or is this So sometimes causation and correlation are not the same thing. You might be getting a headache from something else, and you just happen to be taking creatine at the same time. Right? It's hard to really say. One thing I will address is, generally speaking, when people start taking creatine, it's a good idea to increase your fluid consumption, because creatine helps to pull fluid into the cells, and it has that cell volumizing effect. And in order for creatine to get absorbed and utilized, you should make sure that you're adequately hydrated. So that's another thing. Like, are you adequately hydrated? Like, there's a lot of layers to this onion we can unpack and peel back here to see, like, why are you getting the headaches? It may be a direct correlation. Like, it could be directly caused to the creatine. You stop the creatine, you might stop the headaches. Who knows? Or you might stop the creatine and still have the headaches. I don't know, right? Or it could be something totally unrelated. What I will suggest, though, I mean, again, I'm not a doctor. Don't even pretend to be one on YouTube. If this is something that's been persisting for quite a while, like you're regularly getting these headaches, go get it checked out, right? Like, if you're in doubt, get it checked out, because who knows? This could be the sign of some underlying issue there. But if this is just a random, like, oh, I took creatine and I got a headache one day and it didn't happen again, well, I wouldn't worry about it too much. But if it's a consistent thing, like you're getting headaches every single day, get this checked out. Like, just don't brush it under the rug and hope it gets better on its own, right? But if it's just a one-off thing, then it might not be a big deal. Yeah. Again, there's so many layers to this onion. I mean, it's hard to, from a simple one-liner there, I get headaches when I take creatine. It's hard to diagnose it. And if you went in to see a doctor, they'd ask you a lot more questions to try and diagnose this as well. All right, Michael's saying that he agrees with the 10-minute walks. Absolutely. I learned to eat items that will only spike my insulin levels once during the day. That, I understand where you're coming from with that. And when it comes to food and managing blood sugar and all this kind of stuff, that depends a lot on your lifestyle, your activity, and what you're doing that day. Because foods that spike insulin, primarily carbohydrate foods, that's the wild card. So if you're having a very sedentary day, then you probably don't need a lot of carbohydrates to fuel that sedentary activity. Whereas if you're doing a very high activity day, hard training, hard endurance, hard physical labor, whatever, you're going to need to eat to fuel that energy demand. So how you structure your nutrition, it's not just like a one size fits all. It depends on how much calories you're burning. I'll give you an example. Like, let's just say driving your car. You say, like, oh, I only drive my car back and forth to work, and it's a very short run each day. And then you have someone else, they're driving a taxi for a living, or they're a long distance truck driver or something like that, and they're on the road for like hours upon hours every single day, whereas you're doing like a 20-minute commute twice a day. A taxi driver is going to burn a lot more gas in their car than someone who drives back and forth 20 minutes twice a day. So it's saying, hey, both people are driving cars, both people should burn the same amount of gas. We're going to have the same fueling strategy for both. No, it doesn't make sense whatsoever. So a lot of these random nutrition advice, like people say, oh, never eat carbs or cut out all sugar or this or only whatever, that might work for one person in one particular situation, but it's not necessarily going to work for everybody in all situations. So carbohydrates, that is primarily your fuel source, your high octane fuel source. That can be adjusted and based on your activity levels, just the same as you can adjust how much gas you put in your car based on how much you drive. If you do very little driving, you're going to burn very little gas. If you do a lot of driving, you're going to burn a lot of gas, right? Trying to say everybody needs to burn the same amount of gas is kind of pointless. And the same thing when it comes to nutrition. Trying to say everybody needs to eat the same amount is pointless. But in your situation, you're doing what works for you, right? So I mean, that's the key thing here, right? So you're eating foods. You say you're only basically eating high carb foods once a day. If that works for you, more power to you. All right. But just wanted to clarify that, because some people may hear that and say, well, okay, I got to do that. Well, if you're in a similar situation, you probably do. But if you're not, then you don't. What's your view? Oh, sorry. Here, what's your view about alternate day fasting with the gym? I'm not a fan of fasting. I just flat out no, because generally speaking, And if anybody who fasts, you can probably, if you're honest with yourself, you're going to relate to this. You fast, okay, so you have a day where you're not consuming anything. What happens when you create this massive calorie deficit? You're going to overcompensate. And usually it's going to be like a day of starving, a day of binging, a day of starving, a day of binging. And it might not be directly like day on, day off, but over time, if you create a massive calorie deficit, you're going to overcompensate sooner or later. That's just your body has these natural built-in survival mechanisms. Like you can't just create a massive calorie deficit and just be, oh, I'm cool with that. Your body's going to compensate some way, some shape, some form. And usually it's going to trigger higher appetite, higher cravings, and it's going to kind of like force you to eat. And if you're trying to rely on willpower and grit and determination, say, no, not going to eat, not going to eat, not going to eat, then it's going to try and combat and conserve energy other ways. It's going to reduce your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, and you're going to find like your energy levels go down. You're just sluggish, and you're trying to conserve energy whenever possible. Your body is you can't outsmart your body. That's what I'm trying to say. It's very, very clever. So all these types of strategies, like, oh, I'm just going to fast. Yeah, okay, it can work in the short term, but long term, it's not a reliable solution. And the way I always look at stuff like this is we need to think bigger, think long term, like not just, okay, am I creating a calorie deficit today or this week, but like, what about over the course of the month, over the course of the year, and ultimately even over the course of like 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? Like if you're heavier now than you were this time last year, then you average the year in a calorie surplus, regardless of how many diets or fasts or whatever you've done. If you're heavier now than you used to be, you've averaged a calorie deficit over the long term. If you're lighter and in better shape now than you were a year ago, then you average the year in a calorie. Or I think I got that wrong. If you're heavier, you average a calorie surplus. I might have screwed that one up. But anyway, it's time to end the video chat now. I've been talking nonstop for the past hour. It's time to shut up. But I'm bottom line, I'm not a fan of fasting because it usually leads to binge eating afterwards. Where are we to? Blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about those carnivore influencers? Next question. I'm not a fan of carnivore influencers or vegan influencers or anybody who preaches extreme one-sided approach. I'm a big fan of well-balanced nutrition. I know that's not sexy and it's not controversial, but it works. All right. Let's see what else we got there. Laying down, bringing it to forehead or behind the head. All right, I believe this one is from, was a follow-up to a question we had about skull crushers, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to find it in my chat box here now. Just a second. Yeah, okay. French press versus skull crusher. To me, that's the same exercise, right? You just said they're laying down and bringing it to your forehead or behind your head. Oh, okay. I think I'm picking up what you're laying down there. You're considering behind your head as a French press and to your forehead as a skull crusher. It's personal preference. It's the same exercise. It's just I find if you go behind the head with the tricep extension, there's a little bit more of a pullover motion because you're moving your arms up and down. Whereas if you're bringing it to your forehead, it's more of a strict, isolated tricep move. So I usually do the skull crusher variation if that's what you're asking. But again, that's my personal preference. If you like bringing it to the back of your head and that works, it's kind of like a semi pullover that way, right? You're getting some of that pullover motion. Whereas if you're just doing skull crusher, it's more strict tricep movement. It's not right, wrong, good or bad, but just different. What's your favorite shoulder exercise? That's a loaded question too, because there's 3 heads to the shoulders, right? I mean, you got your front, side, and rear delts, plus then you got the traps as well. So all those different muscles technically need different exercises to hit them properly. But from just a general point of view, my personal favorite shoulder exercise, I like the standing shoulder press, like a standing dumbbell press or standing military press. That's one of my favorites. We also have a cool at our gym. We got a Viking press machine, which is like a machine leveraged shoulder press. So it's a standing shoulder press, but that's personally my favorite. I just like the standing shoulder press. I like having the whole body and the core support that weight because I find like it's a very functional movement because you have to balance and stabilize right from your shoulders, your core, right on down through the hips, ankles. Helps to work on balance and stability. So that's my personal favorite. But if you're looking at overall shoulder development, you need to include you need to include rear delt work. You need to include side delt work. Front delt is going to get work with the presses. And you also need to do some work for the traps and upper back as well. But again, you asked my favorite. So my favorite is the standing shoulder press. That's one that I enjoy doing that one. Are underhand barbell rows good for lower lats, or will they tear my biceps? No, they are good for lower lats. They also secondarily work the biceps. The only way you're going to tear your biceps is if you lift beyond your means or you use jerky form or bottom line, any exercise could potentially tear the muscle if you push beyond your means or you use poor form. But if you're lifting within your means and using good form, then the risk of tearing is very, very low. Unless, of course, you have a pre-existing muscle tear or injury that you're working around. But yeah, underhand work in general, like once you rotate the palms facing you, you're going to work more of that lower lat. And you could try this like for lat pull downs, for rows, pullovers, different exercises like that. Like try it with the overhand grip and then try it with palms facing you, the underhand grip. And you'll get different muscle stimulation in both. And I like to include both. Sometimes when I'm doing those exercises, like for example, I'm doing lat pull downs, I'll do a couple working sets with an overhand grip, do a couple working sets with an underhand grip. Same with the pullover machine. Sometimes I'll do it with the overhand grip. Sometimes I'll do it with the underhand grip. Do a couple sets of each. Same with the barbell rows or rowing machines or whatever. You can play around with it. And if you have a personal preference, obviously you can do more of that, but I'm kind of like 6 of one, half a dozen the other. Like I like both. So I'll very often either include both within the same workout, or I might alternate it. One workout to do overhand, one workout to do underhand. Right. But I do enjoy the underhand variation. Definitely does target more of that lower lat. And you might feel stronger because it may put you in a stronger position to pull. All right, we got Mark joining in saying Merry Christmas from London. Let's get traps and triceps popping through your skin this year. Hope the family's well. Harvey will be benching 405 for 20 in a few years. Who knows? He might be. 405 for 20. I mean, come on, man. I mean, that's impressive by any standard. 405 for a single is damn impressive. With skull crushers, it's stricter to the head, but I find then you get more stretch behind the head. I like more, but seems to always hurt my elbows. Yeah, that's the key. It's what can you do comfortably, right? I've mentioned that before. This goes beyond like what's the best exercise, what's going to stimulate more muscle growth, or hey, the latest MRI study show that this gets more muscle activation than that. Well, what can you do comfortably and what can you do consistently, right? If an exercise that causes pain and discomfort is more effective on paper, that's not a practical exercise, right? It's what can you do? And this is more important, especially as you get older, but it actually applies from all ages. Because I mean, heck, even if you're young and just getting started, if an exercise hurts, like don't do it. Like either modify your technique or modify the exercise variation or something so that you can do it comfortably with pain-free. But if it doesn't work for you, then just do another exercise variation. And this is something that can change over time. Like I'll give you an example of this. I know when I first started training, I used to read the magazines and watch like pumping iron and all I remember seeing guys doing the dumbbell flies for the chest. Like Arnold was doing dumbbell flies for the chest and pumping iron. And it was also, in the magazines, a lot of the photo shoots, they'd have guys doing like dumbbell flies. So I'd try, I'm going to do dumbbell flies for my chest. And it's like, I don't feel anything in the chest. Like, this is just hurting my shoulders, man. Like, this is not doing diddly squat for my chest. So in my early years of training, I mean, I tried to make it work. It's like, no, this is not working for me. So I just focused on presses, like bench presses, push-ups. I was also involved with martial arts, so I used to naturally do a lot of push-ups with that. And that actually, okay, I'm doing push-ups. I can feel my chest. Doing presses, okay, I can feel my chest. We actually had a pec deck fly machine on our home gym. Okay, I can feel my chest with that. So those were my chest exercises. And I was using dumbbell flies. Sometimes I'd throw them in just because I thought I had to, because I've seen pictures of guys doing them in the magazine. But I'm like, this isn't doing nothing. I'm not feeling anything. So that wasn't the primary exercise for me. But then after several years of training, and I actually started to develop some chest muscle, then when I tried the dumbbell flies, like, oh, okay, now I can actually feel it. Now I actually got some, I got a bit of a chest there that I can feel it stretch and contract as I'm doing the dumbbell fly. So what I'm getting at is, based on your development, like when you don't have a lot of muscle on your frame, it's probably going to be hard to get that mind muscle connection with some exercises. But as you get more developed, then you may start to feel those muscles working, and different exercises may be more beneficial as you get more developed and more advanced, and vice versa. Sometimes something that you used to use when you were younger, as you get older, it might not work as well. Like, you may cause joint pain or discomfort. So be open-minded is what I'm saying, is like, and be willing to try different movements based on how your body is responding and feeling right now in this moment, and not getting hung up in like, oh, I used to do that, so I should still be able to do that, or hey, this guy is doing that, I should do that. No, you got to find what works for you. And I know that's kind of generic vanilla advice. We hear that over and over again. But the more you're around the iron game, and the more you have that personal experience, the more you'll realize, hey, that actually makes a lot of sense. That is very applicable, focusing on what you can do right now based on your mobility, your body type, your development, your aches and pains and injuries and issues that you're dealing with. Focus on that. Right. But it's something your body will change over time, right? And I've noticed that myself. Like, certain exercises that weren't effective when I was younger are effective now, and then there are certain exercises that I used to be able to do that I can't do anymore. Right? Your body will change if you stay around this long enough. Right? You will find that. All right, folks, I'm going to get ready and clue this chat up. It's been great chatting with you. I always enjoy doing our live at 5 video Q&A on the Total Fitness Bodybuilding YouTube channel, as well as over on the Facebook page. So hopefully you got some help from this and benefit. And if there's anything that you would like to clarify, if I didn't get around to answering your questions, or if you have other questions that you would like to submit, whether you want to submit them through Messenger or have me cover them in a future Q&A, feel free to reach out to me either through email or private message. I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you. All right, I'm going to clue it up. Have yourself a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you next week, same time, same place. And we're getting down the wire now for so next week. Actually, yeah, we'll be able to do this right on through. I was thinking through Christmas. This is not going to affect Christmas at all. Christmas doesn't fall on a Friday this year, so we're good. Anyway, guys, we'll be back again next week, same time, same place, with another live at 5 Q&A. Have yourself a good one. Take care. Over and out.